New York greeted her with a cool breeze. The narrow streets of Manhattan, habitually clogged with traffic, reflected bright signs and neon flickers in the puddles. On the corner stood a fan holding "The Tourist" poster, but she didn't notice, her gaze was turned inward. Angelina Jolie arrived for the interview alone. No PR team, no entourage, not even a personal makeup artist. That was her condition. Alone. Just her and the microphone. The studio was on the 24th floor of the NXT Morning Show building, officially a morning talk show with a wide reach, but in recent months known more for the sharp, provocative remarks of its host, Graham Lennon. The press dubbed him the face without brakes, and he wore the title with pride. The elevator stopped. The door opened, and the world of television snapped shut behind her like a glass trap. In the studio corridor, soft lighting, potted green palms, the scent of cheap antiseptic and glossy coffee grounds. "Good morning, Ms. Jolie," said an assistant, hastily handing her an iPad. Graham made a few changes to the script. "Is that okay?" Angelina glanced at the tablet. No specific questions, just vague topics: humanitarian missions, relationships with exes, relevance in Hollywood, personal motivation. She handed the tablet back silently. "It's fine," she said quietly. "I'm ready." The dressing room was empty. In the mirror, a tired face, but the eyes still sharp as blades. No heavy makeup, just a slight shimmer on the lips. Angelina took off her blazer, revealing a black shirt. On the radio, Fleetwood Mac played, a sound from another era. For a second, everything inside her seemed to pause, like a breath before leaping into the void. The assistant opened the door. "We're live in 3, 2, 1. Stepping into the studio was like stepping onto a stage, but with no script. The spotlight burned. The audience was almost hidden in darkness, except for the clearly visible first row. The host was already seated, wearing his signature smirk, the smirk of a man who feels power and isn't afraid to use it. Angelina Jolie. Global star, mother of 6, goodwill ambassador, he began, turning to the camera. "But who is she today? That's what we want to find out." She nodded and sat down. Cameras surrounded them like hunting dogs in ambush. Live broadcast. Red light on. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You know, people have been saying you've disappeared off the radar." Like, she was there, and then, poof, silence. "Would you agree with that?" She looked at him calmly. "I just stopped shouting louder than everyone else. That doesn't mean I disappeared." He smirked, but his voice turned colder. Or maybe the world just stopped listening. A pause. She leaned in slightly. "Maybe. But I never played by this world's rules. Why should it listen?" Graham laughed. Lightly, but with a trace of superiority. "Well said. But let's be honest, you were a Hollywood symbol. Posters, red carpets, contracts, everything, and suddenly you're in refugee camps, on borders, in Afghanistan. People were confused. Are you an actress or a politician? Or just someone tired of playing?" "I'm someone tired of pretending," she answered. "That's all." He nodded, as if catching the moment. This was the beginning. "Then tell me, when was the last time you truly felt respected? Not as a beautiful woman. Not as an icon. As a person?" She held her breath for a second. Inside, it was a blow, precise, right to the ribs. But her face didn't flinch. Respect isn't something you receive. It's something you keep. Even when the whole world turns away. Graham looked slyly into the camera. "Just like in a movie." Angelina smiled faintly. "The problem is, life isn't a movie. There are no retakes here." Backstage, the assistants exchanged glances. The studio grew quieter. The audience stopped rustling. Something was beginning. Something bigger than an interview. All right, he continued. Do you think your mission is real? Or just part of a new image? She slowly turned to him. Do you think pain and hunger are just props? He opened his mouth but didn't respond right away. She looked at him with such focus it felt like time in the studio had stopped. The cameras kept rolling. Silently. The hot studio lights beamed down, but Jolie no longer noticed them. It's not about image, she continued. It's about what you do when no one's watching. About choices. About conscience. And about fear. Because you're alone. He wanted to make a joke. But couldn't. For a second, something trembled in his voice. Fear? You're afraid? Always, she replied. But fear isn't a reason to stop. It's a reason to find out who you are. The studio fell silent again. Not a ringing silence, a real one. Dense, like glass. She wasn't an actress. Wasn't an activist. In that moment, she simply was. Real. The red broadcast light glowed. And the whole world was watching. The second part was just beginning. And yet, Graham began, leaning over the table. Don't you think you're one of the most contradictory figures of your time? Angelina raised an eyebrow slightly. Why? Because you built your career on beauty. Then you became a symbol of rebellion. Then, the perfect mother. Then, a political figure. And now you're sitting here talking about fear, conscience, and reality. People don't know who you are. Do you need to understand someone in order to respect them? He smirked. I don't. But the audience does. He gestured toward the camera, as if it contained a hidden jury. They want to know, are you being honest? Or have you just become a brilliant strategist? A pause. The camera catches her profile. Her eyes are fixed on him. Not a trace of irritation. I never promised to be understood, she replied. I promised to be honest. Those are not the same thing. He tapped the tablet in front of him. A photo from the 2000s appeared on the screen behind them, Angelina in black, tattooed, standing beside a motorcycle. A tabloid headline, the most dangerous woman in Hollywood. Is that you? He asked. That was a part of me. Like many other things. And this? He swiped again, a UN campaign photo. She's standing among refugee women, wearing a headscarf. Was that genuine? Angelina didn't look at the screen. Only at him. Every woman in that photo is real. I stood beside them. You didn't. Graham squinted. But it's still an image. No matter how you frame it, everything you do becomes media. Even your tears. Even your silences. And that's your problem, not mine, she said, and for the first time, there was steel in her voice. You want to expose an image, forgetting you helped create it. He went quiet for a split second. Trying to regain control. All right, then let's talk personal. Your relationship with Brad Pitt. The divorce. The legal battles. You do understand that some viewers see you as manipulative? She didn't answer right away. A long pause. Everyone in the studio waited. That's their right. But not their truth. He pressed another button. A new headline appeared behind them, Angelina Jolie, homewrecker or protector of children? What do you say to those who call you a victim? And to those who call you an aggressor? I don't owe anyone an explanation of how I protect my children, she said softly, but each word landed like a bullet. My children know the truth. I live for them, not for headlines. But surely you understand, he insisted, that to half the country you're a symbol of strength, and to the other, hypocrisy? She leaned slightly forward. And do you understand that maybe I'm just a human being who's tired of staying silent? Silence. He leaned back, as if he hadn't expected her to go on the offensive. You know what's strange, Graham? She continued. You care so much about how people perceive me. But not once have you asked how I feel. Not once. He raised his eyebrows. All right. How do you feel? She looked straight into the camera. Slowly. Clearly. Tired. Tired of every conversation being a battle. Of a woman in the media space having to defend herself just to exist. Tired of every action being called either PR or betrayal. Tired of expectations. Of myths. Of the need to explain, justify, smooth things over. But you're a public figure. That's the price of fame, he threw in. No, she replied. That's the price of broken standards, where a woman isn't allowed to be multifaceted. Strong and vulnerable. Beautiful and smart. Reserved and bold. I have the right to be myself. Even if that's inconvenient for your show. There was applause in the room. Not loud, but genuine. People were beginning to feel something was happening. Not an interview. A confession? No. A cross-examination, where the witness suddenly becomes the judge. Graham lost his rhythm. You sound like someone with a mission. But who gave you the right to be a voice? No one. I claimed it. He went silent. And then, the final blow. I came here knowing you'd try to turn me into a headline, she said. But I'm not a headline. I'm not your format. I'm not here to be edited. I'm here for those who listen, not for those who trim. And if after this show you say I'm manipulative, so be it. At least I said it in my own voice. The camera lingered on her face. Calm. Steady. The center of gravity. Behind the scenes, the producer frantically waved his hand. Get that yellow headline off the screen. Go back to the close-up. The host picked up his glass of water. Took a sip. Time dragged on. Angelina leaned back in her chair. The interview isn't over yet, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. I'm not leaving, she said. But now you're not asking me the questions. You're asking yourself. The broadcast continued. But the power dynamic had already shifted. Are you always this composed? Graham asks unexpectedly, setting down his glass of water. No, Angelina replies calmly. I've just learned not to fall apart on live television. He gives a small smile, for the first time during the interview. And off camera? Off camera, I'm human too. Sometimes I sit in the car for 10 minutes before I get out. Sometimes I write messages and delete them. Sometimes I don't know where to go. So no, I'm not always composed. The tone softens. The camera picks up on the shift, the tense outline of the dialogue begins to melt. The host seems to stop fighting. Or maybe he just realized the battle is lost. What keeps you going, he asks. Responsibility. And fear. She pauses. I'm afraid of letting people down. Afraid of disappointing. Afraid my children will one day say, you weren't there. So I hold on. You're talking about fear. That's not something we usually hear from people at your level. Yes. People expect us to shine all the time. But that's a lie. Everyone who lives in the spotlight knows, the brighter the light, the longer the shadow. Not everyone admits they live in the shadow too. She picks up her glass of water and takes a sip. I once had a scene in a movie where my character just stands by a window. Just stands there. And in that silence, in that pause, there was more truth than in any dialogue. Life is like that too. Sometimes you just stand still, quietly. And if you're lucky, someone beside you understands that. Graham looks at her differently now. No longer with the mask of a critic. He starts to really listen. And so does the audience. In one of your interviews, you said that cinema no longer saves you. Why? Because I used to hide in characters. I didn't act to be an actress, I acted to be someone else. And then I realized, I need to learn how to be myself. Without makeup, without a script, without a second take. Is that hard? It's impossible. But I'm trying. Pause. The studio is almost silent. Just the sound of breathing. You often talk about your children. What do you want to pass on to them? The freedom to be themselves. The freedom to make mistakes. I want them to know, I wasn't perfect, but I tried. Not to buy their love. Not to be a superhero. Just to be there. That's all. And what do you want to say to yourself? She looks away, as if searching for the answer somewhere beyond the camera. To myself. I'd say, you survived. Now live. Another pause. Unscripted. Heavy. But not depressive, real. The host picks up his tablet, glances at the screen, the prepared questions, but sets it aside. I've done interviews for many years, he says. And I often felt when someone was performing. Skillfully, artfully. But you're not performing. Or maybe, you're just the greatest actress in the world. She smirks. Maybe. But today I'm just a woman who's tired of pretending that everything's under control. For the first time, Graham doesn't interrupt. He just nods. Are people afraid of you? Sometimes. But more often, they don't understand me. And that's scarier. And you, are you afraid? Constantly. And yet you still go on camera? Because some things need to be said. Even if your voice trembles. Silence. The director whispers in the assistant's ear. This isn't an interview anymore. This is a moment. The camera zooms in. Angelina's eyes, tired, alive. No mask. No shield. You know what used to haunt me, she suddenly asks. That I always felt like a stranger. Wherever I was. Even in the most luxurious halls, even at premieres. I still felt like a guest. And only with age did I realize, it wasn't the room. It was that I never gave myself permission to feel at home inside myself. Graham nods slowly. He's moved, but doesn't show it. And now? Now I'm learning to be a home to myself. Not a palace. Not a fortress. Just a home. And how's that going? It's hard. I've lived out of a suitcase for so long, in life and in spirit. But I don't want to run anymore. The words hang in the air. The audience is silent. No applause, and that's not indifference, it's respect. Graham leans back in his chair. Thank you, he says softly. Say that to yourself, she replies. For stopping the attack. Even if just for a few minutes. He smiles. Am I that predictable? No. I've just seen it many times. And almost always, it's a defense. From your own pain. From someone else's truth. At that moment, he says nothing. No longer a host. Just a person sitting across from her. The broadcast is still going. But the viewer already feels, something has changed. Not just in her. But in him too. A phone call. The producer signals from the control room. Graham takes off his earpiece, listens, and frowns. We need to continue according to the plan, he says dryly, lifting the tablet. The plan? Angelina asks. There are topics that are mandatory. She looks at him, understanding, a shift is coming. All right, she responds quietly. Let's do it. You've talked a lot about your work, your philosophy, your family. But there are topics the audience discusses more eagerly. For example, surgeries. Your decisions regarding your own body. Do you think you have the right to impose such an example on millions of women? A pause. I'm not imposing anything on anyone, Jolie says calmly. I'm doing what I believe is right for me. If someone finds support in that, good. If not, that's their right. But you're a public figure. Your steps send a message. An example. Responsibility. Do you realize that? Do you realize that when a man talks about his health, it's seen as bravery, but when a woman does it, it's seen as provocation? Graham falls silent. The camera captures the subtle battle of gazes. I did what saved my life. It wasn't a publicity campaign. It was a decision. Made in silence, with fear, with pain. And if it hurt someone, maybe it's not about me, but about their own boundaries. A ringing silence fills the studio. But Graham doesn't give up. And what about your relationship with your father? The public often discusses your rift. Don't you think you've exploited this in interviews? For a moment, her eyes darken. I've never exploited my pain. I tried to explain what it's like to grow up with emptiness instead of support. If someone sees it as a show, that's their perception. Mine is different. But you've made statements through the press, through films. Because I wasn't given another way to be heard. Because the world doesn't let women just say, I was in pain. We're forced to explain, justify, quote contexts. At this moment, Graham suddenly asks an unexpected question. Have you ever thought about leaving? Hiding? Just disappearing? Jolie goes silent. She stares at one point. Yes. Many times. After divorces. After failures. After betrayals. After I once sat on the bathroom floor and didn't know why I should even get up. But, there was always a because. Sometimes it was the kids. Sometimes it was just the morning. Sometimes it was a letter from an unknown woman who wrote, "You helped me." And I stayed. Her words come without pathos. Without adornments. Just the truth. Graham nods. But he picks up the tablet again. Clears his throat. You're often told that you're too serious. Where's your lightness? Where's the humor? Have you never wanted to be just, normal? She smiles slightly. I am normal. Just not the normal that's comfortable to see. I don't know how to play the cute girl. I don't smile for the camera. I don't want to be the heroine of someone else's imagination. If that's a problem, it's not my problem. Don't you think people are sometimes afraid of you? I hope so. She smiles a little wider. They're not afraid of me, they're afraid of what I might say without fear. And believe me, that's much scarier. The assistants glance at each other. There's tension in the room. The camera continues filming in live broadcast mode. Have you ever broken? He suddenly asks, quieter now. Many times. I've torn myself apart and put myself back together. Sometimes with mistakes. Sometimes with cracks. But I am here. Not perfect. Not iron. But real. He lowers the tablet. This interview is nothing like we planned. This interview is like life. You can't plan what will open up if you stop defending yourself. Graham exhales. Nods. Are you going through a tough period right now? She doesn't answer immediately. You know, I no longer divide life into easy and hard periods. I just go. Sometimes through it. Sometimes against it. But I go. Because if I stop, it will pull me in. The studio is in complete silence. The operator slowly changes focus, now the close-up is only on her face. Last question, says Graham. If you were given the chance to go back to one point in your life and change something, would you take it? She looks into the camera. Right into it. No hints, no theatrics. Yes. I would change one thing, would stop living trying to prove that I'm not broken. The camera slowly pulls back. The light softens. Behind the scenes, the producer nervously glances at the stopwatch. But the broadcast is no longer controlled by the plan. It belongs to her. And suddenly, she smiles. Genuinely. Slightly. Tired, but alive. Can I drop the role now? She asks quietly. Or are we still playing? And with those words, she lowers the microphone. The interview came to an end. The studio, filled with bright lights and dozens of cameras, suddenly fell silent. The camera no longer followed every movement. Angelina removed her microphone, felt her shoulders relax, and smiled at Graham, who seemed to still be in disbelief about what had just happened. That was unexpected, he said, sighing. I didn't think you would go beyond those limits. You really aren't afraid. Angelina looked at him. In her eyes, everything was red. It was the look of a woman who hadn't just survived in a harsh world but had learned to make her own rules. You're mistaken, Graham, she said. I am afraid. But I don't let myself show it. Do you understand? He nodded, not knowing how to respond. In his eyes, there was something akin to respect but also uncertainty. And that was somewhat unsettling. He was used to controlling everything around him. But Jolie, as he now understood, was the exception. She didn't abide by any rules. As soon as she was escorted out of the studio, she caught her own reflection in the hallway mirror. It was a strange feeling, watching herself as if from another life. As if her entire life was merely a show, and she wasn't part of it but only observing. She hurried to leave, but they wouldn't let her go. Waiting for her outside the door was a group of journalists. Shouts, questions, camera flashes. Angelina, are you worried that now your personal life will become a topic of discussion? They ask, but again, like in the studio, she doesn't rush to answer. Her restraint shocks them. I've always had privacy issues. And I don't plan on solving them through the press, she replies. Like everyone else, I have the right to a private life. But in that moment, she loses her composure. Looking one of the journalists in the eye, she says. You must get tired of watching other people's mistakes and other people's tears. Yes, I fell. Yes, I was at rock bottom. And yes, I made mistakes. But now, it's no longer your story. Here, in the corridor, she loses her confidence. From these people who don't know her, don't understand her, she feels the walls she's been building for years start to crumble again. Her gaze shifts far off, to the clean, endless street, which seems to her both frightening and full of promises. Thoughtfully, she takes steps toward her car, trying to escape the looks that no longer allow her peace. The moment the car doors close, promising her to disappear for at least a few minutes from the world, it feels like a brief moment of freedom. But that moment proves to be fleeting. Her phone rings in her pocket. Media, a number she had never added to her contacts, and one that always meant one thing, trouble. Yes? Her voice sounds tired, almost quiet. Angelina, sorry to bother you, but we need to talk. It's about the interview. We realize you made a very important statement. One that's important not just for you, but for many women. She waits for the person to finish, but her eyes no longer focus. Time seems to slow down. Yes, it was important. For me, and probably for you too. We're ready to offer you the chance to make your statement on a much larger scale, they continue. A chance to control how it will be perceived. She stays silent, knowing that behind these offers, there are always certain conditions. This is not what I'm looking for, she says calmly. This is not a fight for the sake of fighting. This is my path. My experience. My truth. You will hear me when you realize that the words, control, and truth don't always go together. When she ends the conversation, Angelina feels a strange lightness. It's as if she's re-experiencing difficult moments, but now without fear. Without the feeling that she needs to defend herself. Lightness, but also heaviness. And in that, lies her strength. Driving through familiar streets, she stops at a traffic light. Suddenly, her gaze is caught by a bright billboard, featuring her, not the Angelina Jolie she knew, but the one who should be in the public's eyes. In her face, everything is hidden: despair, strength, light, and shadow. She thinks about the billboard for a few seconds and realizes that she will likely never escape such images, but now she's no longer afraid of them. These pictures no longer define her. At that moment, she decides to return to her world, where there are no televisions or editors. This is her world, her inner space. A world where she can be not a heroine, but a woman who experiences. Who doesn't claim to be an ideal and doesn't need others' evaluations. As soon as she drives off, remaining completely alone on the empty road, her phone vibrates again. It's a new call, but she ignores it, feeling that for her, right now, there's only one answer that matters. Holding her breath, she exhales. I'm free, she thinks, or at least, I can think that way.